All right, so welcome everyone to the session called Don't Fear the Media Call with VEM's very own Mark Bosma. So Mark, I will turn over the floor to you.
Thanks, Harry, and thanks everyone for either sitting in or tuning in, depending on where you are. I had hoped to get down to Lake Maury today, at least for a little while this morning, but other duties called, so I'm missing out on the in-person experience, but glad we have the virtual experience. Yeah, like Harry said, I want to show everyone today just simple steps on how to deal with media calls when you have an incident in town, and also throughout, I'll introduce you to a few reporters, not in person, they're not there, but I have some slides. And this first one, this first reporter, quote unquote, is named Penelope. You'll see Penelope on top of Kika Bronger's camera. She's the videographer for New England Cable News, and Kika and Penelope have been shooting the news for about 25 years.
Is he referring to you?
No, but I think he didn't realize I'd be here.
Okay. We've got Penelope here.
Okay. Oh, is Penelope there?
Yes.
Really?
Yeah.
Small world. Hi, Kika. Anyway, so the first elemental question is why even talk to the press? Well, simply put, to inform your constituents and visitors of current hazards, because you can convey the best information to people, like where they shouldn't be, when to evacuate, or what they should otherwise do to stay safe during an incident. And you have the best information, and if you don't have the best information, then get them to whomever does have the best information, whether it's another town or state police or VEM or whoever you can put the press in contact with. And if you don't talk, the press isn't just going to go away and say, oh, well, they'll get information elsewhere, even if it's, someone who may not necessarily know what's going on. They have a job to do, so they will have to get their information from somewhere. So it's best that it be you. And the most important thing you can do to that end is be prepared before, during, and after a crisis, making a plan for the three of those. There's Penelope again. I think that's the last one I have. Okay, so when you are preparing for those media calls during an incident, you want to assign certain roles. And these roles can be done by one person, they can be done by multiple people. But there are certain things that just best practices, rule of thumb, are important to have. The first one here is a media contact. That's not necessarily the spokesperson. It can simply be the person who answers the phone, takes messages, and arranges for a callback. They can send the press to designated areas where the action is happening, but this person could be back in the office just, okay, okay, good to know what you need, and here's how we'll get you the information. The spokesperson will be the person who actually talks to the press, and again, that could be the same person as the media contact, but you have to know who the spokesperson is, how to get in touch with that person, and arrange a callback, and more importantly, warn them the press is coming if the press is already on their way. And your town should make sure that everyone in the response knows who the media contact is. It makes things simpler for everyone if they see a reporter to just give them a phone number to call. Your next role, as I mentioned, would be the spokesperson. It obviously needs to be knowledgeable of the current situation, and when roads are washed out, it's 90% of the time it's the road foreman or the town manager. This person needs to know how the greater process works, both town response and recovery, like how long it'll take to fix certain roads, or maybe even what kind of federal or state assistance may be coming to restore whatever services are cut off. That person needs to be available. So it may not be the road foreperson or police or fire chief, because that person may be too busy dealing with the incident to speak to the press. But it still needs to be someone official who has a lot of knowledge of the situation and recovery and response and that sort of thing. And again, make sure everyone in the response knows who the spokesperson is so they can tell the press who they need to talk to. Another important one that we use a lot in the Joint Information Center and the EOC is a web social media person. This person, again, could be the same person as your spokesperson and media contact, but it needs to be someone that you and the town trusts because, and they need to understand websites and various forms of social media. But it doesn't necessarily need to be someone who works for the town. Someone you trust can be, you know, a partner, one of your kids who's really proficient. It's simply the person who will edit the sites with information provided to them. You know, I ask my kids to monitor social media during storms, and if they see something, they let me know about it. They point me in the right direction. They don't make any corrections. They don't post anything, but at least it's extra eyes on social media because more and more, well, depending on what area you're in, a lot of more and more, you know, a majority of a majority of those who are impacted by the disaster are on social media of some sort. But again, that depends on bandwidth in your area and that sort of thing. And of course, you're going to want someone who's going to run Vermont Alert during the incident. Can be the same person as your media contact spokesperson, web and social media person, but that person's getting a little busy now. If your town isn't on VT Alert or doesn't have access to it, call Vermont Emergency Management. Ian Kilburn will set up a training for your town. This person needs to be available to get messages out quickly and should know about the current response and general response practices. And we'll get into a common operating picture in a couple of minutes. Now, this may seem weird. My intention was to kind of give everyone a sense of who's covering the news, who you might run into. I picked a few people at random, except for one, but and this information, lest anyone think I'm a stalker of some sort, this is all on their station websites, including the photos and the information. So you'll see a few of these, and the first one is Calvin Cutler, who works for Channel 3. Personal information, he's from Cape Cod. He works on his classic Mazda Miata, which I didn't know there was such a thing as a classic Mazda Miata. He hikes and loves German techno music, which I never would have thought of Calvin. And right before we started, my curiosity got the best of me, so I listened to some German techno music, and it sounds exactly as you would imagine it would. Okay, so your next step after identifying roles is prepare talking points, and you can do that before anything actually happens. I mean, people who have been through this knows anyone who's been through this knows that there are certain things that can be anticipated, like what the hazards are, you know, how mutual aid works. Safety recommendations are huge, and those are things that you can probably anticipate, but make them general with fill in the blanks with current situation information. You can probably even fill in ahead of time that during a flood, River Road is going to be closed, because I think in my experience, every town that has a river road, it's closed during a flood. It's the name is right there. And of course, work in safety messages, because that's the most important thing that we do when we're communicating. We're trying to keep people safe, and you know, secondarily, making sure that they don't interfere in their response. Okay, I mentioned a web or social media person. If you don't have a social media account for your town or agency, start up a Facebook or Twitter page. That's a good start. It doesn't cost anything except for time. You can establish it, and if you never touch it again, then you haven't lost any time at all. But I would encourage you to have something there so that you can have, you know, in essence, a community bulletin board during an incident that you are in control of. If you have a website, maybe create a news section on it. Town of Shelburne, they have a good news site where they post up to the minute information, like during elections or if we have a storm or something like that. And build an audience by promoting it to constituents and posting regular content. You know, in communications to residents, just general communications or at meetings, mention the social media pages. And once people are there, give them something to look at, even if it's, you know, you're posting pictures of a new fire truck or a new dump truck in town, or the retirement or promotion of someone within the town or fire department. And like I said earlier, you're going to want to assign a social media person for the event. Okay, here's another reporter, this time from WPTZ, Brianna Borghi. I've worked with her a few times. Very nice person, gets it. And when I say gets it, doesn't over demand, knows what our limitations are. From Massachusetts, coffee lover, theater buff, and food connoisseur. And, you know, I caution, I mean, if you know someone's coming, a reporter, you know, maybe look up to see where they're from and if you have anything in common, but, you know, keep that to a minimum. Like I said, I feared a little that this was an invasion of privacy, but it really, they come from the websites, so there's nothing stopping you from looking someone up on a website and saying, okay, well, we come from a similar place. But get to know reporters just in general, even if they're on scene and you strike up a conversation with them. I don't know many people who would shut you down because you're a mere commenter trying to talk to a reporter. In fact, I don't know anyone who's ever thought that way. Okay, now during an incident, establish all the contacts, connect everybody, and figure out how you're going to do that ahead of time. That's between incident command, media contact, spokesperson, VT alert, and social media. And you want to pull together all the information for the response so that everyone's, you know, speaking and playing from the same sheet of music. You all have to have the same updated information. Usually the person on the scene has the best and most up-to-date information. That's why, you know, you should check with the field before speaking with anyone, if you're the spokesperson, and keep on a shared document or an email if you can, or just write it down and compare notes with everyone from time to time. And, you know, if you have to convey that over the phone, you have to convey that over the phone. But it's really important for everyone on the team to be talking so that you're all saying the same thing, writing the same thing, and because if there's conflicting information coming out of the town or the fire department, police department, then there's a chance that the public isn't going to maintain trust in your ability to respond. Okay, another thing you can do ahead of time before you start getting media calls, and this could actually you know, head off any media calls, provide updates on social media and websites as soon as you have it. Don't wait to be asked, especially since you're pretty much, when you're going on social media and websites, you're reaching out directly to the public, so you're going to want to do this anyway. Current conditions, safety recommendations, anything that will help the public help themselves during an incident. Of course, do a VT alert to those who register if conditions warrant. And people often ask about putting out press releases. It never hurts, but if you have limited bandwidth, first of all, the press will likely go to your website and social media accounts and get the information there. If it benefits your response and the public to have the press involved, then by all means, send out a press release. It can go to local media or statewide. It's up to you. And it can simply, when you're writing a press release, especially if you don't have a lot of experience writing press releases, it can simply be a bulleted list of these are the road closures, these are the protective actions, these are the safety recommendations. If you just express the most important information, it doesn't have to read like a novel or a news article. They just, and I think the press would tell you is as simple as possible, just to get it under their noses so they know what's going on and they can tell the public what's going on. Okay, another reporter you might run into, Dana Casulo from Buffalo, New York, is a fan of the Vegas Golden Knights and loves the outdoors, just as I think every Vermont reporter says in their bio. I think that's why most of them come here. Okay, so when the phone rings and you hear that it's a reporter, of course your media contact is the one getting that call. But the first thing you want to do is make sure you get their name and affiliation, who they work for. Ask what they're looking for, and then ask for a deadline. But I think any media in the room will tell you they'll ask for the quickest possible turnaround time, and then ask them for what a realistic deadline is. And if you have any constraints where you may not be able to make that deadline, make sure you tell them that and give them some kind of an indication on when they can expect it. Your media contact, if that person is not already your media spokesperson, they can answer basic questions. If you know you have the most up-to-date information on road closures, you can say that. And anything the team determines can be answered by the media contact, and certainly safety information is a big part of that, because generally when you have floods, you're telling people not to walk or drive through floodwaters, for example. And then find out if the reporter wants an interview with your spokesperson and whether that'll be over the phone or in person out in the field. Okay, the media contact will then generally relay the nature of the inquiry to the spokesperson and figure out when the spokesperson can talk to the reporter. Figure out where it's going to happen. Consider the background and the reporter's need for video or photos, but if, obviously, and I don't think anyone would do otherwise, don't bring them into a dangerous situation just because they want pictures of the action. And if your spokesperson is somewhat limited on time and in a big incident, I think everybody in town will be limited on time. You can schedule multiple media at once and just get everybody finished with as soon as possible. So, like it or not, the press will show up, especially if you're, ground zero, as it were. You seem to have the worst flooding in an incident. The press will be there. If there is a need to kind of control access to certain areas are extremely dangerous. You can appoint someone to be a media escort. It doesn't need to be anyone official. It can be the person isn't talking to the press. So this person needs to not talk to the press because they're not the official spokesperson. And so it doesn't need to be an official, just someone who knows the parameters and can express like, well, we can't go over there because we're afraid there's going to be a washout soon, and it's not safe. And then, that said, don't limit areas, don't limit access to areas just because it's easier. I doubt anyone would do that. I haven't heard of anyone doing that. But if the public can generally be there, the press can be there. Although I have heard of roads being closed and the press being kept behind the barricade, and local traffic has been allowed into the area, which it's kind of a gray area because oftentimes roads are closed to everything but local traffic. But especially when it's a natural disaster, if it's safe, give them access to whatever. Most of it's public property anyway, and you'd be hard pressed to stop them anyway. All right. Eventually, they're going to pull out the microphone and the camera, and before the interview, it's okay if you are nervous at all, or if you don't have a lot of experience doing this, it's okay to at least ask the reporter for questions or a general idea of what they'll be asking. They really want the best responses possible, and during a flood, it's unlikely they're hiding some agenda, so to speak. I don't think anyone ever hides an agenda or wants a gotcha question, but if they give you a general idea of what they'll be asking, then you'll be able to give better, more informed answers, and that's really what they want. They want the best information possible. When you are talking, make sure to hit on the current hazards and travel warnings, and that safety information, what the public should and shouldn't be doing. If you have evacuations, mention that. If there are shelters, you certainly want to promote those because people need to know where they can go. Always tell people to stay away from floodwaters, all of that. And you're going to have key points, i.e. the points above this line. Work them in as often as you can. The rule of thumb is work it in 3 times. So you can practice that or find a way to fit that in. And after the interview, it's okay to tell the reporter, look, the most important thing we're trying to convey here is X. Like I said, they're reporters. I don't know how anyone feels about reporters. Some have a dim view of them, but they're most, if not all, in Vermont are looking out for the public just as much as we are, and they don't want anyone to get hurt. So they'll help us out if we, especially when we help them out. In the interview, if you don't know an answer, don't answer it. Offer to get it or steer them to the appropriate person. Usually that's bumping it up to the state or something like that. And if someone asks a question for another agency, like a neighboring town or a state agency, you may know the answer, and it might make things, much easier for the reporter if you answer it. But if it's about another agency, just don't answer it. You may not know a little wrinkle or updated information, but so it's a little more inconvenient for the reporter, but you just have to leave that to the other agency. Like I would never answer a question about something medical. I would send them to Ben Truman at the health department. Always mention where the public can go for updates, and that's where your social media sites and your website come in. And also encourage the public to sign up for VT Alert, www.vtalert.gov. And like I said, send them to social media accounts as well, where they can get the most, they can get updates as they happen, because they're going to leave and they're going to be looking for more information, and they'll either call, or if they know that you're being proactive, then they'll count on the website and social media. And finally, I think Kika's in the room. That means Jack's in the room, and Jack's the only one who knows this was coming. So Jack's a native of Massachusetts. He's hate to say it, but he's one of the old guard around here because he's been around for over 20 years. And I hate saying that because he was an intern when I was when I was still a reporter at Channel 3 many moons ago. He was with WCAX, but now he's with New England Cable News, which also works with WPTZ. Our biggest connection, I guess, is he took over my Made in Vermont series when I left Channel 3. That series is still going, and like I said, he's been around a long time, and Jack is very good at what he does, and so you can be pretty frank with him, and he knows what you're talking about. So just some these last few slides, just very generally what the news media wants. These are the 6 questions that they teach in journalism school you want to answer, and if you can, who, what, when, where, why, and how. You often don't know, like, for example, how or who, especially in a crime that has just occurred, but as many of these questions as you can answer on your talking points or as you're just preparing, the better you're going to be, and the better served the public is going to be. So during the incident, I mentioned social media a lot because it's just so critical that you keep the beast fed, and because a lot of people do count on Facebook and Twitter for their information, and again, that's a limitation in some of your areas. I know there may not be internet to some areas of town. Cell service may be terrible, but that's why we do things repetitively, like TV and radio interviews and even press releases. But you want to monitor it constantly for misinformation. And again, like I said, I have family members who do that from time to time. I actually, during an incident, I have someone on my team at the JIC doing that. But if you just have friends and family who know they can call you or contact you if they see something a little out of the ordinary on social media regarding the incident, you're better off there with more eyes. Provide accurate information without being argumentative or confrontational. If someone does post some misinformation, more often you're going to deal with people who are critical, and don't argue with people. It's just, it's really, I don't think it's our place unless it really diminishes the public's view of you, and if it's getting traction. But for the most part, I find, and most people find, that your other followers will come to your aid, and so that's generally how that works. And continue posting updates during the response and recovery. Again, that social media person who may be the same person who's answering media calls. Finally, after they leave, they will leave eventually, even if it's after 6 o'clock with a live shot. Get together, media contact and spokesperson should talk about what was discussed. Are there any red flags? Do you think anything was conveyed that maybe not the case now? And if you have to follow up, were there any issues with site access that could become an issue? And collect information. Keep getting the most up-to-date information for follow-up calls. And you can, before the press leaves, you can say, we're going to be updating our Facebook page into the night. So that will be the most up-to-date information. And that's great. It saves them a phone call. It saves you a phone call. So however you want to handle that. And if you can, monitor stories and newscasts. And if there is a significant error, if someone misspells your name or someone's name, that's no big deal. But if there's an error in fact that will affect your response, then that's when you request corrections for significant errors. So keep your eye on things and keep updating information, and you should be good to go. And I think that's the end of the formal presentation. And of course, let's see, how do I get out of this? I'm going to stop sharing now.
Does anyone have any questions for Mark? So far, Mark, I don't see anything in the chat.
Except Ben's in the chat, you see the picture of our own Ben Rose, who last time he did a story with Jack Thurston, they mistakenly identified him with the Chiron as Jack Thurston, which I don't know. I love you, Ben, but I think that's a bigger insult to Jack than it is to you. Seriously, any questions, or has anyone, if you want to share any best practices or issues you have? I know it's late in the day, but and if you just want to call me anytime or email me at mark.bosma@vermont.gov if you need any guidance or have any questions, or if there are any issues, then please do that. I'm always happy to help.
So we'll do one last call. Anybody have anything else? No, seeing none. All right, Mark. Well, thank you very much. Much appreciated. Yeah, this was great. And I think it's always, I know from my fire experience, you always, when the reporters show up, you get that little knot in your stomach and you get a little nervous and you wonder where this is going to go. And I think it's just take a breath and, sometimes we would teach people to, not look at what's going on at the scene, like look the other way and just kind of like, just focus. But yeah, this is helpful to give you some tips and pointers, and not everybody gets to do this very often. So that's the other thing is, if you did this all the time.
Put on some German techno music and serve coffee. That's my best advice when they show up.
I think we've got the coffee here right now, but not the German techno music. All right, thank you, Mark.
All right, thank you all.